Hey guys, so as of last night, we just saw boxing superstar, using quotation marks, Gervonta Davis, just KO Frank Martin. There's also that UFC fight night that was awful. I don't even understand how it was that bad. It was just awful. But I have had this thought for a while, and I'm not the first one to think about it. But this was really just a moment that I needed to just talk about it is the biggest problem in boxing right now. And as someone who is a pretty big boxing fan, that's the sport that I started with, of like watching, enjoying before becoming more predominantly with MMA. So I have a very big soft spot for boxing. I love the history of it. I love watching the fights. There's amazing guys on there like Alexander Usyk. I loved his fight against Tyson Fury. Phenomenal fight. Can't wait for the rematch. But it's an issue, and I will be very specific with who I'm talking with because there are a lot of people for it, but just because the person fits in this category does not technically mean that they are applied to it. But it's undefeated records in boxing. And I think it's just awful right now of it. It was definitely started by Floyd Mayweather, which this isn't even, as someone who also just hates Floyd Mayweather, this isn't me trying to blame Floyd Mayweather because it makes sense of it, but it's just stupid that happens, of promoting yourself as this undefeated fighter, protecting that zero at all costs, the Al Heyman method when it comes to like boxing promoting of that, and it's just become the new zeitgeist of it, and it just is killing boxing popularity. Like, there's a reason that it is in general, like, obviously it's come back up a bit with some good matchmaking thanks to Saudi Arabia, but it should not have to take an entire kingdom just to throw you money just so you can do your job and fight actual good boxers, or the fights that people want to see, not prolong it, not to have all these goals for it, because there's statistics showing how many boxing champions are undefeated. And another big problem is obviously the four belts in boxing. That's not even the issue, because if there are four belts, I don't care. The biggest issue of it is it's hard to keep track of. But I don't care. I don't know. It just doesn't really matter to me. The issue isn't the belts. Issues is the boxers who can help hold them and then be like, I already got a belt. I don't need to fight another undefeated boxer. Because you have Gervonta Davis, who I'm pretty critical of because I think he is a phenomenal boxer. I think he's very talented. He's very good. He really has not fought anyone. Like, if we're going by, like, at the time of him fighting them, he really hasn't. A lot of his championship belts have been a vacated title or under weird circumstances. Like, I remember specifically he was supposed to fight for the WBA regular title, not the super title, because there was already a super champion of it who had just won it. The WBA upgraded the fight for Gervonta Davis to the super fight and lowered the super champion's belt to the regular. Like, just so that way they could have, our WBA super champion is the more popular fighter. Like, that's stupid. And guess what? The super champion never fought the WBA regular. That's how bad it is. That's how bad it was. So they kind of were giving him false legacy. Like, yeah, he's a three-weight champion. I believe only one of his championship wins, like to win the belt, is against someone who actually held the belt of it. And I'm pretty sure the dude he beat wasn't even like amazing or Hall of Fame worthy in my opinion. But he's continuously been fighting in fights that feel like they're tune-up fights or under weird circumstances. Like the Ryan Garcia fight, like that's another guy of it, which thank goodness that fight happened of it, but people constantly ignore all of the weird rules Gervonta Davis made, and people kept trying to say, like, oh, Ryan Garcia doesn't want that fight. And I'm like, yeah, maybe he didn't want the fight, but also Gervonta Davis clearly didn't want it either, because in no other fight has Gervonta Davis put in a rehydration clause to completely drain Ryan Garcia in that fight when Ryan Garcia wasn't even supposed to be in that weight class because he had moved up, but it's like, oh, you won't come down and fight me. He comes down to fight you, and then he switches the rules to, oh, now it has to be a hydration clause, so he's drained so you can KO him. It's just absolutely stupid. Like, the only real guy I can think of other than Ryan Garcia that he's beaten recently that's been good is Isaac Cruz, who obviously he went up in weight class and he just beat Rolly Romero, who isn't really a good champion, but he won the belt up there. So that's like the only real one of that. and he couldn't KO Isaac Cruz. That's one of his only 2 decisions, and I know the other decision was very early on in Gervonta Davis' career. This man is almost 30, and he's still fighting as if he's a prospect waiting for his next match. And it's awful. Then you have Devin Haney, who I give more respect to Devin Haney, but he could be used as another example of it, of at least with the Ryan Garcia fight, where they were trying to give him the easiest money fight without really, I don't know, fighting for it, the promotion aspect of like undefeated fighter. I give more credit to Devin Haney than I think people need to realize. Even though I absolutely hate the dude, I think he's a scumbag. I think he's a lot of these things. There's nothing likable about him. But he did at least fight people. Like, he fought Lomachenko, something Gervonta Davis couldn't do. Something Gervonta Davis is only now doing, now that Lomachenko's fucking like almost 38, or he might be 38 now. Of it, like, it's annoying of it. And another issue I had with Devin Haney for this, but this is just, I think, him and his dad being absolutely fucking stupid people, is the kindest way to word it, is how they went about trying to get fights like with Gervonta Davis, which will also fall into Gervonta Davis for ducking Devin Haney, like, clear as day, was Devin Haney trying to promote it as if he was supposed to be the A side when he's nowhere near as popular, despite having the undisputed title, nowhere near as popular. It's just not the case of it. But Gervonta Davis most likely would use that as an excuse to pull out of the fight. Obviously, that's how it had to be. You go up to heavyweight, where the only person from there that I can say fought, actually was like, had the balls to fight all these guys. Alexander Usyk, undefeated at cruiserweight, became undisputed champion there. You cannot say he ducked anyone there. He won every single fucking belt there, beat everybody in like this giant tournament thing. Comes up to heavyweight, beats fucking Anthony Joshua. Props to Anthony Joshua. Nobody gives him enough credit for him having the balls to actually to fight people of it. I know after he lost to Andy Ruiz, thing of it, it's like, well, he doesn't really need to protect that O anymore. But he still he fought all these people, thing of it. He gave Usyk challenge. Usyk is a tough motherfucker. Gave him a tough rematch, thing of it. Fight all these guys of it. Absolute props to Anthony Joshua. I know he hasn't been undefeated for a while, but you get the point. Like, absolute props. Usyk wins all the belts besides the WBC belt and the ring belt. And I know he eventually does fight Fury. But just because they now have fought does not mean we can ignore the absolute fucking dumpster fire that was the build-up to this fight of trying to get it set up. Of Tyson Fury, and this is solely on Tyson Fury. You cannot tell me Usyk had anything to do in it. Tyson Fury going, oh, I know I'm more popular than you of that, and I only hold 1 belt, so my merit doesn't really matter. But this seems to be like an 80-20 split of revenue. Even if the belts were split in half, there's no way you could justify this being an 80-20 split of that. Like, that's just not how it is. He kept doing all these demands that Usyk kept accepting. The fight would fizzle out, and then Fury's like, I guess he didn't want the fight. He fights absolute bums for his title offenses, like absolute padded legacy of it, other than beating Deontay Wilder, who, wow, that hasn't aged too well, has it? Probably the easiest champion of there, besides the knockout power, which, yes, is formidable. But, I mean, that's something Tyson Fury can survive that. Tyson Fury's a lot bigger, a lot better for that. That's better than him fighting Joshua or Usyk, in my opinion. I just don't think you can argue that. He beats fucking, I don't remember his name. It was a guy who held like the interim belt that he fought in the UK when he retired for the first time. Then he fights Derek Chisora for the 3rd time. Now, this isn't like, oh, this was the rubber match. No, this was Tyson Fury wanted another title defense against a guy who I don't think was even in the top 10 that he had already beaten twice. Then he fights Francis Ngannou, arguably loses that fight, and then he fights Fury he fights Usyk because, well, I don't really have any other option. It's awful. And then you can go down to welterweight, which I think people kind of have a bit of revisionist history between Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence Jr. of just how long that fight took to make. And at least for Terrence Crawford, in welterweight, I'm not saying in the other weight classes, just because I know Terrence Crawford became undisputed champion in that class. But in welterweight, he won the he won the WBO welterweight title, and then defended a bunch of times against not really that good of talent. of it until he beats Errol Spence Jr. Impressively, might I add, you showing like, wow, this guy's really good. I wish we could see that against other opponents as well, rather than a bunch of these guys. And now that he's like 40-0, he's like, oh, he's only 10 fights away from matching Floyd Mayweather, and he's undisputed in 2 weight classes. How is he better than Floyd Mayweather of that? Where I'm like, I don't think the opponents match. And then you can even go to Floyd Mayweather, who I don't think is the GOAT. I don't think he's anywhere near being the GOAT, because you can look at his legacy of it. A lot of the fighters he fought, especially in the latter half of it, that people always say that he beat, were either older of it. It was very weird circumstances about it, of how they got the fights to go, of it, of, oh, I want you to use these specific gloves. Let's not forget that. I forgot who it was against, but he didn't want this boxer using this specific brand of gloves. And he paid him extra, which to money to Floyd Mayweather, that's toilet paper. So he just gave this boxer a bunch of money, use these specific gloves, so that way every advantage could go to Floyd Mayweather, because I don't think he was confident enough with that. And that's just how it is. I'm boldly going to say that. You just get it. It's just all of these guys are undefeated in that. They're not going to fight each other. And we put such a big deal on when they do eventually fight, which is good because, yeah, they're actually fucking finally fighting of it. But that should be the normal. We should not be patting boxers on the back for actually fighting other boxers who are good. Why are we making like why are we parading this? Like that should be the normal. Because obviously you go back in time, not even that long ago, you go to like the 80s and 90s. These boxers, that was like a normal thing of it. They wanted to fight each other. They would do it for free. When you had Sugar Ray Leonard of it, Marvin Hagler, Roberto Duran, Thomas Hearns, these 4 absolute killers who, if they chose to avoid the other 3 and just keep defending their belts because they already had great legacies, you could probably argue a lot of them as GOATs. You can still argue a bunch of them as absolute GOATs of the sport, top 10 maybe. I don't know for all of them, but you can of it. And yet they said, I want to be the best. And if I want to be the best, I have to beat them. Not, well, my record's undefeated, so I have an argument of being the best right now, so I'm just going to keep adding to that so I can have a bigger number with a 0. And we as fans as well, this is a big issue. This is on the fans' part now of it. We put so much emphasis on the 0 that once a boxer loses, we instantly shit on them. We tear them down. We base it on, oh, they lost to this guy. We trash them. We call them that they got fraud checked. Yeah, I know you had 27 fights that you didn't lose, but since you lost this one, you're a fraud of it, which in some case might be true, but it's every single time. Because a lot of people doing Tyson Fury, like, yes, I think he has a decently padded record, but he's also a champion. He's beaten Deontay Wilder, who, for like 10 title defenses, no one could beat. Tyson Fury did it in one of the most entertaining modern-day trilogies. He beat one of the Klitschko brothers. He's done enough that I think calling him a fraud is a little stupid there. Called Anthony Joshua a fraud. People are like waiting. If Usyk loses even once, even if it's a split decision loss, very close fight, contested, he's a fraud. It's just how it is, and that's stupid. Terrence Crawford loses. He's a fraud. I don't care. He's undisputed champion in 2 weight classes. First to do that. He's a fraud. Now Inoue, he loses. Oh my God, fraud. Can you believe that? No wonder no to put in that. Canelo Alvarez. Some people even argue that because he lost to Floyd Mayweather. I just don't get why, because we can't bitch about it and then continue to do it. You can't have both in this world, because then you're promoting them to basically be like, well, I have to keep my undefeated record because then that'll happen. And then this is why I think it's more impressive when there's an undefeated guy in the UFC, because most of the time there's a couple of them, and they do usually lose their O. But there's a handful of undefeated fighters that when they're undefeated, everyone's like, oh shit, that means they're the real deal. Now, of course, there's cases like Khabib Nurmagomedov where you need to finally take a magnifying glass against his record of pre-UFC. But then you got guys like Shavkat Rakhmonov, who fought in M1 Global, was the champion there, I believe. I defended it there. And has gone in the UFC. His first 2 opponents, not really the best of that, but he did to them what you would expect him to do. And then he's climbed the rankings of it and is continuing, and he's now in a position to fight for the title. He's not even 30 yet. You have Ilya Topuria. I believe he's 6-0 or 7. I think he's 7-0 in the UFC. Current champion, undefeated. Phenomenal guy there. It's it's good in the UFC when it happens, but obviously there's a lot of frauds, like, or not necessarily frauds, but like guys who people don't know how long can last, like Ian Gary. I don't think his style or just him in general will stay undefeated for another 2 to 3 years. Now maybe I got proven wrong. Maybe he becomes like he goes 30-0. But then you got guys like John Jones, who, well, yes, he's technically not undefeated. His only official loss is a DQ, but he lost to Dominic Reyes. I'm going to say it there. He lost to Dominic Reyes. He cheats in all of his fights there of it just to keep that, and then that's what people put a basis of. Oh, well, he's never really lost a fight, so he's the GOAT. Obviously, that's how it works. Let's ignore everything else. So I like how the UFC and MMA specifically generally treat undefeated fighters of it, where we almost kind of look to find any hole in it of it, and most of the time we're less likely to judge a fighter who has has 3 losses. If you have 3 losses and you're in the top 10 of any boxing weight class, you're a can. You're a journeyman. If you're like Charles Oliveira, who's like, I forgot what he was before he like goes on a legendary run, but he's got like, I believe, like 8 losses, and then everyone's like, all right, title run starts here. Title run starts here. He's 31 and he's like 31 and like 10 now, I believe, and he's still considered, rightfully so, as one of the greatest lightweights of all time. And that's the best part about MMA and UFC, is that the losses, well, yeah, they matter for a legacy thing of it. Having 1 loss does not end that all, and that's the best part. But I just want to talk about this because I just had a lot to say about it, and I'm just really annoyed by Gervonta Davis, generally, of it. I know he beat an undefeated guy, but so is Rolly Romero, and Rolly Romero he's special. But that's about it for this video. Let me know what you think in the comments. Bye.